Some people walk into a room and seem to make everything better. Others walk into a room and, over time, leave behind confusion, conflict, and emotional wreckage. At first glance, they often appear confident, charismatic, and deeply convincing. They know how to attract attention. They know how to gain trust. They know how to make people believe they are strong, successful, and in complete control. Yet beneath that polished surface, a very different story is unfolding. Relationships begin to crack. Friendships slowly disappear. Families become divided. Workplaces become tense and exhausting. The same pattern repeats again and again, leaving many people asking the same question: why does destruction seem to follow certain individuals wherever they go? The answer is far more disturbing than most people realize. Many people believe narcissists create damage simply because they enjoy hurting others. While harmful behavior can certainly be part of the story, the deeper truth often remains hidden. Behind the need for admiration, control, and constant validation lies something far less visible: a fragile inner world built on insecurity, shame, fear, and an overwhelming need to protect a carefully constructed image. This hidden struggle drives behaviors that can quietly destroy trust, connection, and emotional safety in ways that many people fail to recognize until the damage is already done. Even more surprising, the destruction rarely stops with other people. One of the lesser-known realities of narcissistic behavior is that narcissists frequently damage their own lives as well. The same defenses they use to protect themselves often push away the very people they need most. The same need for control that gives them temporary relief can slowly dismantle relationships, careers, friendships, and family bonds. In many cases, the chaos surrounding them becomes a reflection of the chaos they are desperately trying to keep hidden inside. In this video, you will discover why narcissists feel compelled to control people around them, why they struggle to maintain healthy relationships, why they create conflict even when things are going well, and why so many of their actions are driven by fears they rarely acknowledge. You will also learn about the hidden cycle of idealization and devaluation, the psychological wounds that fuel destructive behavior, and the surprising reason many narcissists ultimately become trapped by the very defenses they rely on for survival. As this video unfolds, you will uncover psychological insights that most people never hear about, along with patterns that suddenly make years of confusing experiences begin to make sense. By the end, you will understand why narcissists leave such a lasting impact on the people around them, and why recognizing these patterns can completely change the way you see their behavior. So stay with us until the very end, because some of the most important truths are still ahead. Welcome to our channel, where we explore the hidden dynamics of human behavior, emotional healing, and psychology. If you enjoy thoughtful content that helps you understand people and protect your peace, make sure to subscribe and join our growing community. One of the biggest reasons narcissists leave destruction behind is because the confidence they show the world is often far more fragile than it appears. Many people assume that narcissists genuinely believe they are superior to everyone else. From the outside, that conclusion seems reasonable. They may speak with certainty, boast about their achievements, dominate conversations, or behave as though they are beyond criticism. Their confidence can appear unshakable. Yet beneath that carefully crafted image often lies a deep and persistent fear of inadequacy. This fear is rarely visible because so much effort goes into hiding it. The image they present to the world acts like a shield, protecting them from feelings they find unbearable. For many narcissists, self-worth does not come from a stable sense of identity. Instead, it depends heavily on how other people respond to them. Praise becomes emotional fuel. Admiration becomes reassurance. Attention becomes proof that they matter. When they receive validation, they may appear energized, charming, and even generous. The problem is that this feeling rarely lasts. External approval provides temporary relief, but it does not address the insecurity underneath. As a result, they often find themselves constantly seeking more recognition, more attention, and more confirmation that they are important. This is why criticism can trigger such intense reactions. Even minor feedback that most people would brush aside can feel deeply threatening to a narcissist. A simple disagreement, a correction, or a challenge to their viewpoint may be experienced as an attack on their entire identity. Rather than seeing criticism as information, they may interpret it as evidence that they are losing control of the image they work so hard to maintain. In those moments, the fear beneath the surface begins to emerge. Some respond with anger, others become defensive, dismissive, or emotionally cold. Some may attempt to discredit the person offering feedback, shifting attention away from their own vulnerability. Over time, protecting the image becomes a full-time psychological mission. They carefully manage how others see them. They may exaggerate successes, hide mistakes, or create narratives that place them in a favorable light. The goal is not simply to look impressive. The goal is to avoid confronting the painful possibility that they are less perfect than they want others to believe. As the gap between the public image and the private self grows larger, maintaining that illusion requires increasingly powerful defense mechanisms. Denial becomes stronger, blame becomes more frequent, manipulation becomes easier to justify. The mask becomes more important than reality, and every perceived threat to that mask begins to feel like a threat to survival itself. For many narcissists, control is far more than a preference. It becomes a way of creating emotional stability in a world that often feels unpredictable. Uncertainty can be deeply uncomfortable for them because uncertainty brings the possibility of criticism, rejection, failure, or exposure. When outcomes cannot be guaranteed, they may feel vulnerable. Control offers a temporary solution to that discomfort. It creates the illusion that everything is manageable and that potential threats can be kept at a safe distance. This is why control often becomes one of the most recognizable patterns in narcissistic behavior. The need for control can appear in many different forms. Sometimes it is obvious. A narcissist may dominate conversations, constantly redirecting attention back to themselves or dismissing opinions that challenge their perspective. Other times, it is much more subtle. They may influence decisions behind the scenes, pressure others through guilt, or create situations where people feel obligated to comply with their wishes. The goal is often the same. By shaping the environment around them, they reduce the risk of encountering situations that make them feel powerless or exposed. In relationships, this need for control can become especially damaging. A healthy relationship requires two people to have equal value, equal respect, and the freedom to express their thoughts and feelings. For a narcissist, however, equality can feel threatening because it means surrendering some degree of influence. They may become uncomfortable when a partner establishes boundaries, expresses independence, or makes decisions that cannot be controlled. What begins as a desire to feel secure can gradually turn into attempts to manage another person's behavior, emotions, friendships, or even sense of self. The same pattern can emerge within families. A narcissistic parent may insist on having the final word in every disagreement. A narcissistic family member may create pressure for others to follow specific expectations while reacting negatively whenever someone chooses a different path. In workplace settings, control can appear through micromanagement, manipulation, or an unwillingness to accept input from colleagues. The environment slowly begins to revolve around protecting the narcissist's sense of authority rather than encouraging cooperation and trust. The difficulty is that genuine connection cannot thrive under constant control. People naturally resist feeling managed, restricted, or treated as extensions of someone else's needs. As a result, tension starts to build. Resentment grows beneath the surface. Conversations become more guarded. Trust begins to weaken. The narcissist often interprets this resistance as disloyalty or disrespect rather than recognizing it as a response to their behavior. The harder they push to regain control, the more opposition they encounter, creating a cycle that feeds frustration on all sides. And when that control begins to slip beyond their grasp, the behaviors that follow can become even more intense and destructive. One of the most confusing experiences people have with narcissists is how dramatically their attitude can change over time. In the beginning, the narcissist may seem deeply impressed by someone. They may shower that person with attention, admiration, and praise. Everything about the relationship feels exciting and intense. The narcissist appears genuinely fascinated. They focus on strength, celebrate achievements, and speak as though they have finally found someone truly special. For the person receiving this attention, it can feel flattering and meaningful. There's often a sense of being deeply understood and appreciated. The connection seems unusually strong, and the future appears full of promise. During this stage, the narcissist is often viewing the other person through an unrealistic lens. Rather than seeing them as a complex human being with strengths and weaknesses, they place them on a pedestal. The person becomes a symbol of everything the narcissist wants, needs, or hopes for. They are expected to provide admiration, validation, support, and emotional satisfaction. Because the image is based on fantasy rather than reality, it creates expectations that no real person can consistently meet. As time passes, reality begins to emerge. The other person expresses an independent opinion, makes a mistake, sets a boundary, or simply reveals ordinary human flaws. These moments are normal in every healthy relationship, but for a narcissist, they can feel deeply disappointing. The idealized image starts to crack. The perfection they believe they had found begins to disappear. Instead of adjusting their expectations and accepting the person as they truly are, they may become increasingly frustrated by the gap between fantasy and reality. This is often where the shift begins. Admiration slowly gives way to criticism. Compliments become complaints. Small imperfections that once seemed insignificant suddenly become major problems. Behaviors that were once praised may now be judged harshly. The narcissist starts focusing on flaws, shortcomings, and perceived failures. The person who was once viewed as exceptional is now treated as though they are responsible for the narcissist's disappointment. The emotional tone of the relationship changes as well. Respect can turn into resentment. Appreciation can turn into blame. Conversations may become more critical, more dismissive, and more hostile. The narcissist may accuse others of causing problems that actually originate from their own unrealistic expectations. Instead of accepting that no one can maintain perfection, they search for someone to hold responsible for their feelings. At the heart of this cycle is a struggle to tolerate imperfection. Accepting reality requires flexibility, humility, and emotional maturity. For many narcissists, those qualities are difficult to access when their self-image feels threatened. Rather than adapting to reality, they often fight against it. They attack flaws, criticize differences, and reject anything that challenges the idealized picture they wanted to believe was real. Relationships often become one of the first casualties of narcissistic behavior because healthy love requires something that narcissists frequently struggle to tolerate: vulnerability. Real connection grows when two people are willing to be honest about their fears, insecurities, mistakes, and emotional needs. Vulnerability creates trust because it allows people to be seen as they truly are. For many narcissists, however, being fully seen can feel dangerous. Deep down, vulnerability carries the risk of rejection, criticism, or emotional exposure. Rather than experiencing openness as a path toward connection, they may experience it as a threat to the image they work so hard to maintain. Because of this fear, relationships often become centered around protection rather than intimacy. The narcissist may carefully manage how they appear while avoiding genuine emotional accountability. When difficult conversations arise, they may shift attention away from their own behavior and redirect focus toward the other person's flaws. Instead of addressing problems together, they may turn disagreements into battles that must be won. The relationship gradually becomes less about understanding and more about control, defense, and self-preservation. Manipulation often enters the relationship in subtle ways. At first, it may be difficult to recognize. The narcissist may use guilt, pressure, or emotional appeals to influence decisions and maintain power. Over time, these behaviors can become more noticeable. One common pattern is gaslighting, where the narcissist causes another person to question their own memory, judgment, or perception of events. Conversations become confusing, facts become distorted. The person on the receiving end may begin doubting experiences they once felt certain about. This confusion creates an imbalance where the narcissist gains greater influence over how reality is interpreted. Emotional withdrawal is another frequent pattern. When faced with criticism, disappointment, or conflict, the narcissist may suddenly become distant and unavailable. Affection disappears, communication becomes cold. The silent treatment may follow, leaving the other person feeling anxious and desperate to restore connection. Instead of solving problems through honest discussion, emotional distance becomes a tool for regaining power and avoiding vulnerability. Triangulation can add another layer of tension. The narcissist may bring a third person into conflicts, compare people against each other, or create unnecessary competition. This keeps attention focused on external drama rather than the underlying issues within the relationship. Constant criticism often follows as well. No matter how much effort someone puts into the relationship, it rarely feels sufficient. Expectations continue to shift, and approval remains difficult to maintain. As these patterns repeat, trust begins to erode. Conversations become guarded. Emotional safety starts to disappear. The relationship demands more energy, while providing less security, leaving people feeling confused, drained, and increasingly uncertain about where they stand from one day to the next. One of the most puzzling aspects of narcissistic behavior is the way conflict seems to follow them wherever they go. Whether it is within families, friendships, workplaces, or romantic relationships, there is often a recurring pattern of tension, misunderstandings, and division. To outsiders, the drama may appear accidental. It may seem like bad luck or a series of unrelated disagreements. Yet when people begin looking closely, they often notice that the same person repeatedly stands at the center of the chaos. This is because conflict can serve a psychological purpose for many narcissists. Rather than simply being a consequence of their behavior, it can become a tool that helps them maintain attention, influence, and control. Creating tension between people is one of the ways this pattern can unfold. A narcissist may share different versions of the same story with different individuals. They may pass along selective information, exaggerate details, or subtly encourage misunderstandings. In some cases, rumors become a powerful weapon. Small pieces of information are presented in ways that create suspicion and distrust. People who once got along well suddenly find themselves questioning each other's intentions. Relationships that were stable become strained, and the focus shifts away from the narcissistic behavior and toward the growing conflict between others. Competition is another common tactic. Narcissists often feel more secure when people around them are competing for approval, recognition, or attention. They may compare siblings, friends, coworkers, or partners against one another. One person is praised while another is criticized. Standards constantly change, creating an environment where people feel pressured to prove themselves. Instead of encouraging cooperation and mutual respect, the narcissist fosters rivalry. This keeps people distracted and emotionally invested in winning favor rather than examining the larger dynamics at play. Chaos also serves another important function. It can act as a shield that hides vulnerabilities. When everyone is focused on arguments, misunderstandings, and emotional drama. There is less attention directed toward the narcissist's insecurities, mistakes, or contradictions. The confusion creates cover. Difficult questions go unanswered because people are too busy dealing with the latest conflict. Accountability becomes harder to establish when emotions are running high and relationships are constantly shifting. An interesting pattern often emerges when situations become peaceful and stable. Healthy communication improves. People begin setting boundaries. Relationships grow stronger. Trust increases. For many narcissists, these moments can feel surprisingly uncomfortable. Peace often reduces their ability to influence situations through emotional manipulation. Stability allows people to see patterns more clearly. As a result, new conflicts may suddenly appear. Old disagreements are reopened. New accusations are introduced. Tension begins building once again, drawing attention away from stability and back toward the chaos where the narcissist feels far more capable of controlling the outcome. When people talk about the damage caused by narcissists, the focus is usually placed on the individuals around them. The emotional wounds left in relationships, the broken trust, the manipulation, and the conflict often receive the most attention. While these effects are very real, there is another side of the story that receives far less discussion. Narcissists frequently end up damaging their own lives as well. In many cases, the same behaviors that hurt other people eventually create serious consequences for the narcissist. This pattern can be difficult to recognize because narcissists often work hard to protect their image and avoid responsibility. Yet over time, the impact becomes harder to hide. Relationships are often one of the first areas where this self-destructive cycle appears. A narcissist may enter a relationship seeking admiration, validation, and emotional support. However, the behaviors used to maintain control and protect their self-image can slowly erode the connection. Constant criticism, manipulation, defensiveness, and an inability to accept accountability place enormous strain on even the strongest relationships. Partners who once felt deeply connected may eventually become emotionally exhausted. Some leave entirely, while others remain physically present but emotionally distant. The narcissist may blame these outcomes on disloyalty or misunderstanding, never fully recognizing how their own actions contributed to the breakdown. Friendships can follow a similar path. Healthy friendships require mutual respect, trust, and consideration. Narcissists often struggle to maintain these qualities over long periods because relationships tend to revolve around their needs, emotions, and desires. Friends may grow tired of feeling used, dismissed, or valued only when they serve a purpose. Over the years, social circles may shrink as more people choose distance over continued conflict. Professional life is not immune to these patterns either. A narcissist may possess talent, ambition, and confidence, qualities that can initially support career success. Yet difficulties often emerge when teamwork, collaboration, or accountability become necessary. Conflicts with coworkers, supervisors, or business partners can create setbacks that seem confusing from the outside. Opportunities may be lost because maintaining the image of superiority becomes more important than learning, adapting, or working effectively with others. Family relationships can become especially painful. Long-standing tensions may lead to estrangement between parents and children, siblings, or extended family members. Years of unresolved conflict can create emotional distance that becomes increasingly difficult to repair. Despite their desire for admiration and connection, narcissists often find themselves isolated from the very people who once cared deeply about them. As these losses accumulate, loneliness can quietly grow beneath the surface. The need for protection, control, and validation may have started as an attempt to avoid pain, rejection, or feelings of inadequacy. Yet the same defenses gradually create the conditions that produce those experiences. The fear of abandonment can contribute to behaviors that drive people away. The fear of rejection can lead to actions that weaken trust. The desire to feel valued can become so overwhelming that it damages the relationships capable of providing genuine connection. One of the deepest wounds left by a narcissistic relationship is the tendency to make people question themselves long after the relationship has changed or ended. Many victims spend months and sometimes years searching for an explanation that never seems to fully arrive. They replay conversations in their minds, examining every detail and every decision. They revisit old arguments, wondering whether a different response could have changed the outcome. They analyze messages, remember painful moments, and search for clues that might explain why things unfolded the way they did. In the absence of clear answers, many begin turning that search inward. They start believing that the problem must somehow have been their fault. This self-blame often develops because narcissistic behavior creates confusion. The person may have been praised one day and criticized the next. They may have been told they were deeply valued, only to later be treated as though they were a disappointment. The sudden shifts in behavior can leave people desperately trying to understand what changed. Since human beings naturally look for cause and effect, many assume they must have done something wrong to trigger the change. The more unpredictable the behavior becomes, the harder they work to find an explanation that makes sense. Over time, this search for answers can become emotionally exhausting. People may question their intelligence, their character, their appearance, or their value as a partner, friend, family member, or colleague. They may begin carrying responsibility for problems they did not create. Every criticism feels significant. Every accusation feels personal. The narcissist's version of events slowly takes up more space in their mind than their own experiences and observations. What often remains hidden during this process is the fact that much of the narcissist's behavior originates from struggles that existed long before the relationship began. The need for control, the fear of criticism, the constant search for validation, and the intense reactions to perceived rejection are often rooted in unresolved emotional wounds. These patterns are connected to the narcissist's internal world rather than the worth of the people around them. The conflict, manipulation, and emotional instability frequently reflect battles taking place beneath the surface, battles that have little to do with the value of the person standing in front of them. Recognizing this can be an important shift in perspective. It allows people to separate their identity from the behavior directed toward them. It creates space to see that someone else's inability to provide respect, empathy, or emotional consistency does not automatically mean those qualities were undeserved. Harmful actions remain harmful, and accountability remains important. Yet, many people begin to heal when they realize they have been carrying burdens that were never truly theirs to carry. They start looking at the relationship through a different lens, one that is less focused on personal inadequacy and more focused on understanding the deeper dynamics that were shaping the entire experience. As the years pass, the long-term effects of narcissistic behavior often become impossible to ignore. The patterns that once seemed effective at maintaining control, protecting self-image, or avoiding emotional discomfort begin producing consequences that reach into every area of life. Relationships become strained, families become divided, friendships grow distant, opportunities disappear. The very structures that provide stability and support slowly weaken under the weight of repeated conflict, mistrust, and emotional disconnection. While these outcomes may appear sudden from the outside, they are usually the result of patterns that have been building for years. Trust is one of the first casualties. Every meaningful relationship depends on trust to survive. It allows people to feel safe, understood, and valued. When manipulation replaces honesty, trust begins to erode. When accountability is avoided, trust weakens further. When promises are broken, blame is shifted, or reality is constantly distorted, people become cautious. They stop sharing openly. They stop feeling secure. The relationship may continue on the surface, but the foundation underneath grows increasingly unstable. Over time, genuine closeness becomes difficult because trust can only exist where honesty and consistency are present. Respect follows a similar path. Families thrive when people feel heard, appreciated, and treated with dignity. When interactions revolve around control, criticism, or emotional domination, respect gradually fades. Family members may begin limiting contact, avoiding conversations, or emotionally distancing themselves as a way of protecting their own well-being. The connection remains strained because mutual respect has been replaced by tension and self-protection. Friendships often suffer as well. Healthy friendships depend on authenticity. People need the freedom to be themselves without fear of manipulation or judgment. Yet narcissistic patterns frequently make relationships feel one-sided. Friends may feel valued only when they provide support, attention, or admiration. As these imbalances become more obvious, many choose to step back. The social circle that once seemed strong begins to shrink, leaving behind fewer genuine connections. Perhaps the most difficult struggle lies beneath all of these external consequences. A person can spend years trying to protect an image, defend against criticism, and avoid uncomfortable truths. Yet constantly running from deeper emotional wounds requires enormous energy. The effort never truly ends because the fears being avoided remain unresolved. Every challenge feels threatening. Every disagreement feels personal. Every setback feels like an attack on identity. This creates a painful irony. In the pursuit of protecting how they are seen, many narcissists slowly damage the very things that give life its deepest meaning. Genuine connection requires openness. Love requires vulnerability. Trust requires honesty. Belonging requires authenticity. These qualities cannot flourish when energy is devoted primarily to defending an image rather than nurturing real human connection. As we reach the end of this discussion, one truth becomes clear. Narcissists do not destroy everything around them because they are powerful, unstoppable, or emotionally invincible. The destruction they create often comes from a cycle they cannot escape. A cycle driven by fear, insecurity, control, and the constant need to defend a fragile sense of self. The manipulation, the conflict, the criticism, and the chaos are often symptoms of a much deeper struggle taking place beneath the surface. This does not erase the pain they cause. It does not undo the damage left behind in relationships, families, friendships, and workplaces. But it does help explain why the same patterns appear again and again. The emotional wreckage is often a reflection of an inner battle that has never been fully faced, a battle between the image they desperately want to protect and the vulnerabilities they are trying so hard to hide. For those who have been affected by narcissistic behavior, this understanding can be life-changing. It allows you to step back and see the situation with greater clarity. You begin to recognize that many of the accusations, criticisms, and emotional attacks were never accurate reflections of your worth. They were expressions of someone else's unresolved struggles. The more clearly you see the pattern, the less likely you are to carry responsibility for damage you did not create. Awareness changes everything. It breaks the cycle of confusion. It weakens the grip of self-blame. It helps you separate your identity from the behavior directed toward you. And once that happens, you are free to focus on healing, growth, and the relationships that are built on genuine respect and trust. If you found this video valuable, take a moment to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your support helps this message reach more people who may be struggling to understand these difficult dynamics. And if you enjoy content about psychology, healing, relationships, and human behavior, be sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a future video. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next one.